Mom is too embarrassing to bring to the wedding. I just can't have her there making a scene with her broken English and outdated clothes. The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze in the hallway outside my daughter's bedroom, the cup of tea I had brought her, trembling in my hands. My own flesh and blood. Melissa, the child I had sacrificed everything for, was talking about me as if I were some shameful secret to be hidden away. But babe, she's your mother. That was Jason, my daughter's fiancé, his voice carrying a hint of discomfort. You don't understand. Your parents fit in. They know how to act around important people. My mom would just embarrass me in front of your family and all our colleagues. She's just so foreign, so out of place. I didn't stay to hear more. I quietly backed away. Tea still in hand, my heart splintering into 1,000 pieces with each step. For 36 years, I had lived in America, but in that moment, I felt like I had just arrived yesterday. An outsider, unwanted, unwelcome. My name is Eleanor Wilson, though I was born Nguyen Thi Huang in a small village outside Hanoi. I came to America as a young bride of 24. My English limited, but my dreams boundless. I met Robert Wilson while he was stationed in Vietnam during his final military tour. He was kind, patient, and saw something in me that others missed. When Melissa was born, we were complete. But when she turned 8, Robert died in a car accident, leaving me alone to raise our daughter in a country that still sometimes felt foreign. I worked my fingers raw at Vincent Delacroix's tailoring shop in Boston, learning the fine art of couture from a man who had once dressed celebrities in Paris. 12-hour days were common, but I never complained. Every dollar was for Melissa, for her education at Westbrook Academy, for her ballet lessons, for her summer camps, for her college fund. I wanted her to have the opportunities. I never had to move through American society with the ease I would never know. I set the teacup down on the kitchen counter and stared at my hands. They were skilled hands that could transform a piece of fabric into a work of art, but they were also worn with calluses and tiny scars from years of pinpricks. They were immigrant hands, hands that told a story Melissa was apparently ashamed of. The wedding was 3 months away. An extravagant affair at the Morton estate with over 200 guests, most of them Jason's family, friends, and business associates. Jason came from money. Old Connecticut money, the kind that spoke in hushed tones and summered in exclusive locations. His parents had been polite to me during our few meetings, but I had sensed their appraising looks, their subtle surprise when I demonstrated knowledge of wine or art. They didn't expect depth from someone like me. I had already paid $25,000 for Melissa's wedding dress. A Vera Wang creation that had made her eyes light up when she saw it in the magazine. "Mom, it's perfect," she had whispered, and I had promised to make it happen no matter what. I had been saving for years, setting aside portions of my modest salary, cutting corners in my own life. No vacations, no new clothes, no indulgences, everything for Melissa's happiness. But now as I stood in my small apartment kitchen, the reality of my daughter's words sank in. I was an embarrassment, a liability, a problem to be managed, rather than a mother to be honored. "Eleanor, you look like you've seen a ghost," Sophia said when I arrived at work the next morning. Sophia Reed had been my friend for almost 20 years, a fellow single mother who understood the struggle. She wasn't a seamstress. She handled the front of the shop dealing with customers and appointments, but we had bonded over shared lunches and common experiences. "I heard Melissa talking to Jason last night," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She doesn't want me at the wedding. She's ashamed of me." Sophia's face darkened. "That ungrateful little—" She caught herself. What exactly did she say? I recounted the conversation, each word still razor-sharp in my memory. As I spoke, I watched Sophia's expression change from concern to outrage. "After everything you've done for her, after you worked double shifts to pay for her college so she wouldn't have student loans, After you skipped your own medical appointments to make sure she had those ridiculous designer clothes in high school. I nodded, tears welling up. I've always known she was a little embarrassed by me, by my accent, by where I came from. But I thought when it really mattered, family would come first. Vincent, who had been listening from his workstation, approached us. At 55, he was still handsome, in that distinctly French way, with silver-streaked dark hair and intense eyes. He had taken me under his wing when I first started recognizing my natural talent with a needle and thread. "Eleanor," he said softly, his accent nearly as pronounced as mine. "What are you going to do?" I looked at him, then at Sophia, and something shifted inside me. A lifetime of accommodation and sacrifice suddenly felt heavy and wrong. I had spent decades dimming my light so Melissa could shine brighter. I had accepted her growing distance, her infrequent calls, her reluctance to introduce me to her sophisticated friends. I had told myself it was natural that she was just building her own life, but this was different. This was rejection. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly, "but I know I can't keep doing what I've been doing." That night I looked at myself in the mirror. For a long time, I saw a woman who had denied herself so much, who had shrunk herself to fit into someone else's expectations. I saw the faint lines around my eyes from years of squinting at fine stitches in dim light. I saw the simple haircut I did myself to save money. I saw the outdated clothes. Melissa was so ashamed of good quality, but from another era. Because new clothes for me were an unnecessary expense when Melissa needed something. But I also saw strength, the strength that had carried me across oceans, that had sustained me through widowhood, that had built a life from nothing. I saw skill in my hands and determination in my eyes. And suddenly, I was angry. Not a hot, explosive anger, but something cold and clear and powerful. The next day, I called Melissa. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. Can this wait?" Her voice was tight with annoyance. "It's about the wedding dress," I said, knowing this would get her attention. There was a pause, then the sound of a door closing. "What about it? Is there a problem with the final payment?" "I need more time to gather the funds," I lied smoothly. "The final installment is due next week, but I'm a little short." "Mom." Her exasperation cut through the line. "This is my wedding dress we're talking about. It needs to be ready for the final fitting in 6 weeks. Can't you just use your credit card or something?" "I've maxed out my credit for your honeymoon package," I reminded her. Another $10,000 I had somehow scraped together. "Don't worry, I'll figure something out. I just wanted to let you know there might be a slight delay." After hanging up, I went straight to Vincent's private office at the back of the shop. "I need your help," I told him, closing the door behind me. Vincent raised an eyebrow. "With what, my dear?" "I want to cancel the order for Melissa's wedding dress." His eyes widened. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes, and I want to create something else instead. Something spectacular, something that will remind me and everyone else of who I really am." A slow smile spread across Vincent's face. "I've been waiting 20 years to hear you say something like that. Tell me more." Over the next few days, I put my plan into motion. First, I called the bridal boutique and canceled the order for the Vera Wang dress, explaining that there had been a change of plans. The $15,000 deposit was non-refundable, but the remaining $10,000 was returned to my account. To this, I added the $5,000 I had set aside for the final payment and the $10,000 from my emergency fund. I now had $25,000, a sum that represented years of sacrifice. But also I realized years of undervaluing myself. I didn't tell Melissa about the cancellation. Each time she called to ask about the payment, I assured her that I was working on it. I felt no guilt about this deception. It was mild compared to planning to exclude your own mother from your wedding. With Vincent's help, I enrolled in a 6-week masterclass in haute couture techniques taught by a former Dior designer who was visiting Boston. The class cost $8,000 an amount. I would never have spent on myself before, but it was worth every penny. In those intensive sessions, I refined skills I already had and learned new ones that transformed my work. "You have a gift, Eleanor," the instructor told me after examining my final project. "You should be designing, not just altering." Meanwhile, I had begun collecting evidence of Melissa's shameful attitude, screenshots of text messages where she made fun of my accent to her friends, emails where she referred to me as her phobie mother, fresh off the boat, a term that stung even after all these years, notes from conversations where she had asked me not to come to her office or to stay silent at dinner parties. I wasn't planning to use these to hurt her or expose her publicly. They were reminders for myself. Proof that I wasn't imagining her contempt. Vincent offered me the use of his private studio after hours, and there I began working on my creation. Not a wedding dress for Melissa, but something for myself. A symbol of transformation. As the weeks passed, I felt myself changing. I stood straighter, I spoke more confidently. I even used some of my money to update my wardrobe. Nothing flashy, but well-made pieces that reflected who I was now, rather than who I had been trying to be for Melissa's sake. "You look different," Sophia commented one day, stronger. "I feel different," I admitted, like I've woken up after a very long sleep. The confrontation came exactly 1 week before the wedding. Melissa burst into my apartment without knocking, her face contorted with rage. "The boutique says you canceled the order for my dress weeks ago," she screamed. "What the hell, Mom? The wedding is in 7 days. I placed my teacup carefully on the coffee table. "Sit down, Melissa." "I don't want to sit down. I want to know what you did with my dress, with the money." I said sit down. My voice was quiet but firm, a tone she had never heard from me before. Startled, she perched on the edge of my sofa. "The money was mine," I said simply. "I worked for it. I saved it. I decided to use it differently." "It was for my wedding dress," she protested, her voice rising again. "No, it was my money that I had chosen to spend on your dress. There's a difference." I reached for a folder on the side table and opened it. "Before we continue, I want to show you something." I handed her printouts of her own words, the texts, the emails, the notes. Her face paled as she flipped through them. "Where did you get these? Does it matter? They're your words, Melissa? This is how you talk about me. How you've been talking about me for years." She looked away, her jaw tight. "You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to try to fit in, when your mother is so different." "I know exactly what it's like to try to fit in," I said, my voice steady despite the pain in my chest. "I've been doing it for 36 years in this country, but I never ever made you feel ashamed for being who you are." A tense silence fell between us. Then I continued. "1 week ago, I heard you talking to Jason in your bedroom. You said I was too embarrassing to bring to the wedding, that I would make a scene with my broken English and outdated clothes." Melissa's eyes widened in shock. "You were eavesdropping on me." "I was bringing you tea," I corrected her. "But that's not the point. The point is that I've spent my entire life making sure you had everything you needed. I worked 12-hour days so you could go to private school. I wore the same clothes for years, so you could have new ones. I skipped doctor's appointments because your dance lessons were more important, and now I'm not good enough to attend your wedding." I didn't mean. "Yes, you did." I cut her off. "You meant every word. And you know what? That's your choice. But this," I gestured to the folder, "this showed me that I've been making poor choices too. I've been choosing to enable your contempt. I've been choosing to erase myself to make you more comfortable. No more." I stood up and walked to my bedroom, returning with a garment bag. I unzipped it slowly, revealing a stunning deep blue evening gown with intricate beadwork and impeccable construction, the kind of dress that would cost thousands in a high-end boutique. "I made this," I said, watching her eyes widen. "This is what I used some of the money for. The rest went to classes to improve my skills and a few other investments in myself." "But my wedding dress," Melissa stammered. her eyes fixed on the blue creation. "You'll need to buy one yourself," I said firmly. "You have a good job. Jason's family has money. Figure it out." "I can't believe you're doing this to me." Melissa's voice cracked. "1 week before my wedding. And I couldn't believe you were planning to exclude your own mother from your wedding," I replied calmly. "We all face unexpected challenges." Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was Jason. Melissa must have told him where she was going. "Is everything okay?" I heard shouting from downstairs, he said, looking concerned. Melissa turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "My mother canceled my wedding dress order. She spent the money on herself." Jason looked confused. "What? Why would you do that, Mrs. Wilson?" I gestured for him to come in. "Jason, did you know Melissa was planning to exclude me from your wedding?" His expression of genuine shock answered my question. "What are you talking about?" "Of course you're coming to the wedding. You're the mother of the bride." "That's not what Melissa told me," I said, keeping my voice level. "And it's not what I overheard her telling you last week about how I'm too embarrassing to bring to the wedding." Jason's face fell. He turned to Melissa. "Is this true? Did you say that?" Melissa's silence was answer enough. "I can't believe this." Jason said, running a hand through his hair. "Your mother has done everything for you, Mel. Everything. And this is how you repay her." "You don't understand," Melissa began, but Jason cut her off. "No, I think I understand perfectly. And I'm ashamed of you right now. Deeply ashamed." The three of us stood in uncomfortable silence for a long moment. Then Jason turned to me. "Mrs. Wilson, I want you to know that I had no idea about any of this. Of course you're welcome at our wedding. In fact, it wouldn't be right without you there." I smiled at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. "Thank you, Jason. That's kind of you to say." "It's not kindness, it's basic decency," he replied. Then he turned back to Melissa. "We need to talk privately." As they prepared to leave, I called after them. "Melissa, regardless of what you decide about the wedding, I want you to know something. I'm done diminishing myself to make you feel better about yourself. I'm done pretending to be less than I am. I'm done being invisible. This is who I am. An immigrant, yes, but also a skilled artisan, a woman of worth, a mother who deserves respect. If you can't accept that, then that's your loss, not mine." Melissa stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she left with Jason closing the door behind her. The next day, Vincent called me into his office again. "I have a proposition for you," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "I've been thinking about expanding the business, opening a small boutique section with original designs, and I want you to be my partner in this venture." I blinked in surprise. "Me, a designer?" "Why not you?" he challenged. "Your work is exceptional. That blue dress you created, it's museum quality." "I've been in this business for 30 years, Eleanor. I know talent when I see it. But I don't have the credentials, the training." "You have the hands," he interrupted, "and the eye. And now you have the confidence too. Everything else can be learned." I thought about it for a long moment, then I nodded. "Yes, I'd like that very much." 3 days later, Vincent hung my blue dress in the shop window. Within hours, a wealthy client had commissioned a similar piece for a charity gala. By the end of the week, we had 3 more orders. The day before the wedding, Jason came to see me at the shop. "I wanted to check if you're still coming tomorrow," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Am I still invited?" I asked carefully. Of course, I told Melissa that if you weren't welcome, then I wasn't sure there should be a wedding at all. I raised my eyebrows. "That's quite a stand to take." He shrugged. It was the right thing to do, and it worked. Melissa's been doing a lot of thinking. She's not there yet, but she's starting to understand how wrong she was. And the dress situation. Her friend Charlotte lent her one. It's nice, not as nice as what you would have made. I'm sure, but it'll do. He hesitated, then added, "I think this whole thing has been a wake-up call for her. For both of us, really." I nodded. "Good. Sometimes we need those. So you'll come? Yes, I said, after a moment's consideration. I'll be there. The wedding was beautiful in that excessive American way that still sometimes startled me even after all these years. The Morton estate was decked out in flowers and lights, with a string quartet playing as guests arrived. I wore my blue dress, and as I walked through the crowd, I noticed people's admiring glances. Melissa looked lovely in Charlotte's dress, though I could see it didn't fit her quite right across the shoulders. When she saw me, her expression was a mixture of emotions I couldn't fully decipher, but when the time came for the mother-daughter photos, she didn't hesitate to stand beside me. "You look beautiful, Mom," she said quietly, as the photographer arranged us. "Thank you," I replied, smoothing the silk of my dress. "So do you." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. That would take time and real change, but it was a start. During the reception, Vincent found me at my table, a glass of champagne in his hand. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against his. "To remembering our worth." Across the room, I saw Melissa watching us. There was something different in her gaze, now not quite respect, perhaps, but recognition. Recognition that I was not just her mother, not just an immigrant with an accent, but a woman with skills and value and a life of my own. I'd spent 20 years making myself smaller for her comfort. Now it was time for both of us to see what I could become at my full height. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey of the past few months. The pain of Melissa's rejection had been real and deep, but from that wound had come a strange gift. The push I needed to reclaim parts of myself I had set aside for too long. Would Melissa and I ever fully reconcile? I didn't know, but I did know that whatever happened between us in the future, the relationship would be different, more equal, more honest, and I would never again make myself invisible for anyone's comfort, not even my daughter's. The next day, a Sunday, I was surprised to hear a knock on my door. It was Melissa, still looking tired from the wedding festivities. "Can I come in?" she asked hesitantly. I stepped aside to let her enter. She perched on the edge of my sofa, just as she had during our confrontation a week earlier. "I've been thinking a lot," she began, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "About what you said, about how I've treated you." I waited, giving her space to continue. "I didn't see it before," she said. "How much I've erased you, how much I've taken from you. Not just money, but dignity." She looked up at me, her eyes wet. "I don't know why I became this person who could be so cruel to her own mother." "Fear," I said simply, "fear of not belonging." "I understand that fear." "Melissa, I've lived with it my whole life in this country." She nodded slowly. "Maybe, but that's not an excuse." She took a deep breath. "I don't know if you can forgive me. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, but I want to try to be better, to see you, really see you for who you are." I studied my daughter's face, seeing echoes of both Robert and myself, and something else too, a vulnerability I hadn't seen since she was very young. Forgiveness isn't given all at once, I told her. It comes in pieces over time, with effort and change. But yes, I think we can try. She smiled tentatively. "Jason and I delayed our honeymoon. We're not leaving until next week now. I was wondering, would you show me your workshop, the place where you made that amazing dress?" I felt something shift between us. Not healing, not yet, but movement in that direction. "Yes," I said, "I'd like that very much." As we walked together to Vincent's shop, I realized that the revenge I had imagined, the satisfaction of Melissa's shock and regret, paled in comparison to this, the possibility of being truly seen by my daughter for the first time in years, of being known not as a caricature or an embarrassment, but as a woman of substance and skill. The shop was quiet on Sunday, with only Vincent there working on a special order. His eyes widened with surprise when he saw Melissa accompanying me, but he recovered quickly, and greeted us with his characteristic charm. "Ah, the newlywed. Congratulations, my dear. Your wedding was magnificent," he said, kissing Melissa's cheeks in the European fashion. "Thank you for coming, Vincent." Melissa replied a bit stiffly. She had always found Vincent's flamboyant manner intimidating. "And thank you for the lovely gift." "It was my pleasure. Now your mother tells me you want to see where the magic happens." "Yes." He gestured toward the back studio with a flourish. As we walked through the main shop, I noticed Melissa taking everything in with new eyes. She had visited the shop before, of course, but always in a hurry, always with an air of slight embarrassment, as if the modest tailoring business were something to be ashamed of rather than respected. The studio in the back was my sanctuary. Light poured in from skylights above, illuminating the dress forms, the racks of fabric, the work tables with their specialized equipment. On one form was my latest creation, a deep burgundy evening gown with an intricate lace overlay. "You made that too?" Melissa asked, her voice hushed. "Yes, it's a commission for Mrs. Cavendish, for the Symphony Gala next month." She approached the dress, examining the beadwork along the neckline. "This is exquisite. I had no idea you could create something like this." Vincent made a small noise of amusement. "Your mother is an artist, Melissa. One of the finest needlewomen I have ever known, and I trained in Paris with masters." Melissa turned to me, her expression a mixture of awe and confusion. "Why didn't you ever tell me? Show me." "You never asked," I said simply, "and after a while I stopped expecting you to be interested in my work. In my life." The truth of those words hung between us. How many years had passed with Melissa never asking about my day, my projects, my friends? How many times had she cut short my attempts to share something about my work with a distracted, "That's nice, Mom," before changing the subject to herself? Vincent, sensing the tension, excused himself to make coffee, leaving us alone. Melissa walked around the studio, touching fabrics, examining sketches pinned to a board. "I don't even know you," she said finally, her voice small. "All these years, and I never really tried to know you." "No." I agreed, "you didn't." I was so focused on fitting in, on being American enough, successful enough, I thought distancing myself from my Vietnamese heritage from you was the only way. She looked at me directly. "I was wrong, and I hurt you terribly in the process." I nodded, acknowledging her words. "Yes, you did." "I don't know how to fix this, Mom." "Neither do I admitted. "But recognizing the problem is a start." Vincent returned with coffee in delicate porcelain cups, his Sunday ritual. As we sipped the strong brew, he began telling Melissa stories about my apprenticeship with him, about the difficult techniques I had mastered, about the celebrities whose garments I had altered over the years. "Your mother worked on Elizabeth Taylor's gown once," he said, eyes twinkling. "The star herself said it had never fit so perfectly." Melissa's eyes widened. "Really? You never told me that." "There's a lot I never told you," I replied, "because you never wanted to hear it." As the afternoon progressed, the awkwardness between us gradually eased. Not disappeared, that would take much longer, but softened enough for conversation to flow. Melissa asked questions about my work, really listening to the answers for perhaps the first time. I showed her my portfolio, the collection of photographs documenting my finest pieces over the years. "Mom, these should be in a gallery somewhere," she said, turning the pages with increasing astonishment. "People should see these." "Perhaps they will now," I said, glancing at Vincent. "With our new venture." "What new venture?" Melissa asked. Vincent explained our plans for the boutique line, speaking with his usual enthusiasm. To my surprise, Melissa began offering marketing suggestions, drawing on her professional expertise. "The timing is perfect," she said. "There's a huge movement toward authenticity and craftsmanship in luxury markets right now. People are tired of mass-produced designer labels. They want pieces with soul, with stories behind them." I watched my daughter as she spoke, animated and engaged in a way she rarely was with me. This was her area of expertise, and for once she was using it to contribute to something I cared about, rather than to impress others. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it felt significant. As the evening approached, Vincent invited us to dinner at his favorite French bistro around the corner. A tiny, authentic place unknown to the trendy crowd Melissa usually frequented. To my surprise, she accepted readily over cassoulet and wine. The conversation continued to flow. Vincent entertained us with tales from his days in Paris, fashion houses, and I found myself sharing stories I had never told Melissa about my childhood in Vietnam, about my early struggles in America, about falling in love with her father. "He would be so proud of you," I told her at one point. "Despite everything, you've built a successful career, a good life." Her eyes filled with tears. "Would he? I'm not so sure, not after how I've treated you." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Your father understood the complexity of straddling two worlds better than most. He saw how hard it was for me, sometimes. He would understand your struggles too." "I wish I had known him better," she said softly. "Me too. But he lives in you in many ways. Your determination, your drive." "That's all, Robert." The evening ended with a warmth between us that had been absent for years. Not forgiveness yet, but perhaps its precursor understanding, recognition of harm done, and a tentative willingness to chart a different path forward. As Jason drove us home later, I noticed how he watched Melissa with a mixture of love and wariness, the look of someone who has seen a new side of their partner and is still processing what it means. "Vincent is quite a character," he commented as we neared my apartment. "He saved my life in many ways," I replied. "When Robert died, I was lost. Vincent gave me not just a job, but a purpose, a place to belong." Jason nodded thoughtfully. "I can see that, and I can see why he values you so highly. Your work is remarkable, Mrs. Wilson." "Eleanor," I corrected him. "Please call me Eleanor." He smiled. "Eleanor it is." When they dropped me at my building, Melissa got out to walk me to the door, something she hadn't done in years. "Thank you for today," she said, "for showing me your world. It was good to share it with you." I replied honestly. "I'd like to come back, to learn more, if that's okay with you." I studied my daughter's face in the glow of the porch light. There was humility there that I wasn't accustomed to seeing, a vulnerability that reminded me of when she was young, before she learned to be ashamed of where she came from. "Yes," I said, "that would be okay." After they left, I sat in my small living room for a long time thinking. The revenge I had planned, the satisfaction of denying Melissa the wedding dress, of forcing her to face the consequences of her actions had provided a certain bitter satisfaction. But this unexpected opening between us offered something I hadn't anticipated the possibility of healing. The following Saturday, Melissa came to the shop again, this time bearing lunch from a Vietnamese restaurant. Not the Americanized version she usually preferred, but an authentic place in the Vietnamese neighborhood across town. "The owner helped me order," she admitted as she unpacked the banh mi and bún cha. "I told her it was for my Vietnamese mother and she took over from there." The gesture touched me deeply. It was small but meaningful, an acknowledgement of my heritage as something valuable rather than embarrassing. We ate at the small table in Vincent's office, and Melissa pulled out a notebook. "I've been thinking about marketing strategies for your boutique line," she said. "Would you mind if I shared some ideas?" For the next hour, she outlined a thoughtful approach that honored the craftsmanship and cultural elements of my work while positioning it to appeal to discerning clients. No gimmicks, no cultural appropriation, just authentic appreciation for skilled artisanship. "What do you think?" she asked when she finished. "I think it's excellent," I said truthfully. "You're very good at what you do, Melissa." She blushed slightly at the praise. "I want to help if you'll let me." "Not take over, just contribute." "I'd like that," I said. As she was preparing to leave, she hesitated. "Mom, Jason and I leave for our honeymoon tomorrow, 2 weeks in Europe. But when I get back, I was thinking, maybe we could have dinner once a week. Start getting to know each other again." The request was tentative, almost shy, so different from the confident, sometimes dismissive daughter I was accustomed to. I'd like that too, I said. She hugged me before she left, a real embrace, not the perfunctory kind she'd given me in recent years. I felt her shoulders shake slightly and realized she was crying. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered. "So sorry for everything." I held her close, this child of mine who had wounded me deeply, but who was still always my daughter. "I know," I said softly. "I know." After she left, Vincent found me in the studio wiping away tears as I worked on the burgundy dress. "Reconciliation?" he asked gently. "A beginning," I replied. "Just a beginning." He nodded. "The strongest garments are those that have been torn and mended with care. The repair becomes part of their beauty, their story." I smiled at the metaphor. "Is that French wisdom? Vietnamese, I believe." He replied with a wink. "I learned it from a very wise seamstress." That night, as I worked late in the quiet studio, I reflected on the strange journey of the past months. The pain of Melissa's rejection had been real and devastating, but from that wound had come a strange gift. The push I needed to reclaim parts of myself I had set aside for too long. The blue dress, the one that had replaced Melissa's wedding gown, now hung in the shop window, a symbol of my transformation. Already it had brought new clients, new opportunities. My name was beginning to be known in certain circles, not as the Vietnamese seamstress, but as the artist Eleanor Wilson. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't about punishment at all. Sometimes it's simply about reclaiming your own power and letting the chips fall where they may. Vincent was right about new beginnings. This was mine, and for the first time in decades, I was excited to see what would come next. Not for Melissa, but for me.